My grandmother paid for everything: the flights, the hotel rooms, the family dinners, even the custom t-shirts we all wore for the big trip. $30,000 gone without a second thought because she believed in family. And yet, the day we got to the airport, my father looked her in the eye and said, "I forgot your ticket, just go home." She stood there, suitcase in hand, confused, silent, and then she turned around and left. While we all boarded the plane, that was the moment I realized some betrayals don't come from enemies. They come from people who once called you mom. I'm telling this story because I want people to know loyalty isn't always returned, and real love doesn't come with conditions. If you're someone who believes that family should mean something, or if you've ever felt like an outsider in your own home, you're not alone. And if this story touches something inside, you take a second to subscribe, because sometimes the stories we tell are the ones we need to hear the most. Would you still call them family if they left the one who built that family standing alone at the gate? My grandmother's name is Ruth. She was born in a tiny town in Missouri, raised 3 children on her own after her husband died at 34, and never once complained about it. She worked as a school secretary for over 4 decades, always packing her own lunch in Tupperware, always reusing wrapping paper at Christmas, always clipping coupons like it was a spiritual calling. She saved every dime. Not for herself, but for her family. I grew up watching her iron handkerchiefs, sew buttons on worn-out jackets, and whisper prayers over the stove as she stirred soup made from leftovers. She was the kind of woman who made one chicken last 4 meals, but never let you leave her house hungry. The kind who slipped $5 bills into birthday cards and said, "Don't spend it all in one place," even though we all knew she had less than anyone. And yet she never made us feel that. Never once. To me, she was magic. Ordinary magic. Like a warm quilt on a cold morning, or the smell of cinnamon rolls that meant Sunday. So when she announced that she was taking all of us kids, grandkids, in-laws on a 2-week trip to Italy, we were shocked. Not just because of the cost, but because it was the first time in her life she'd ever done something that big for herself, except it still wasn't for her. She smiled as she held up the printed itinerary, color-coded and laminated. "I want this to be the one memory we all share," she said. "Something to carry with you after I'm gone." We laughed, joked that she was being dramatic, and she smiled again, but softer this time. I remember catching her packing a week before the trip, rolling her clothes into tiny bundles and fitting them perfectly into her suitcase. She was humming an old hymn, the same one she used to sing while folding laundry. Precious memories, how they linger. And then this is what makes me cry when I think about it. She stopped humming, looked up, and said to me, "I don't know how many more trips I have left in me, but this one feels like a thank you to myself." I smiled and hugged her, but something about the way she said it felt final. Of course, not everything was sentimental. She tried to fit her slow cooker in the suitcase, said she didn't trust foreign food and needed to make pot roast just in case. I told her Italy had food. She said yes, but do they have gravy that tastes like Sunday afternoon? She packed it anyway, even bought a universal plug adapter for it. God, I loved her for that. My father, on the other hand, was less enchanted. He said the trip was unnecessary, that she was wasting her savings and should be thinking about long-term care instead of gelato in Rome. He never said it in front of her, but I heard him. He said, "We'll have to manage her finances soon. She's not thinking straight anymore." That stung, because if there was one person who always thought straight, who always planned, always provided, it was her. But I brushed it off. Maybe he was worried. Maybe he was just being practical. Maybe I didn't want to admit that things felt off still. We all showed up at her house the night before the flight, laughing, packing last-minute items, eating her signature lemon bars while she gave us all little travel kits with earplugs, wipes, and homemade mints in pill bottles. It was the most grandma thing ever. Sweet, thoughtful, and slightly weird. She hugged each of us like we were leaving for war, and when she hugged my dad, she whispered something in his ear. I couldn't hear it, but I saw his face tighten, his eyes shift, like he'd just been reminded of something he didn't want to remember. Later that night, she handed me a folded envelope. "Just in case," she said. Inside was a copy of every booking, her flight, her hotel reservation, her travel insurance, even a printed copy of her passport. She'd planned everything, down to the minute. So when we got to the airport the next morning, when my father said the words he said, it wasn't a mistake, it was a choice. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when Grandma called for a family meeting. We all thought something was wrong. Health scare, legal issue, maybe another one of her just-in-case estate updates. But when we got to her house, she was standing there in the living room wearing a sun hat and holding a giant globe. I kid you not, actual spinning globe. Like from a third-grade classroom. She tapped it dramatically and said, Pack your bags, everyone. We're going to Italy. There was silence for a beat. Then my cousin Ben yelled, "Wait, what?" She smiled wide. "I've booked a 2-week vacation for the whole family. Rome, Florence, Venice, the works. Flights, hotels, tours, everything's taken care of." My aunt gasped. My mom dropped her iced tea and my dad, he smiled, but not the kind that reaches your eyes. Ben asked, "Why now?" Grandma shrugged, "Because memories don't make themselves, and because I finally have enough points on my credit card." We laughed. Of course. She always found ways to turn the sentimental into something light. She handed out envelopes to each of us. Inside were printed itineraries with our names, flight numbers, hotel addresses. She even included a checklist titled, "What to pack when you're pretending to be fancy in Europe." Number 1 on the list, elastic waist pants. Number 2, snacks for the plane in case the food is weird. She'd thought of everything, even booked a private walking tour for our family with a guide she found on a Facebook group called Retired Women Who Wander. My younger cousin Emily, who's obsessed with Instagram, started planning her outfits. Mom was Googling museums. Uncle Rick asked if there'd be American bathrooms. Everyone was buzzing with excitement, the kind of energy you only get when something big is about to happen. Except for my dad. He stood in the corner, flipping through the itinerary like it was a bill he didn't remember approving at one point. I caught him whispering to Mom. She nodded slowly, then looked away when I tried to make eye contact. Still, Grandma carried on like everything was perfect. She pulled out a binder labeled "Trip of a Lifetime" and started assigning roommates for the hotels. She paired herself with me when I asked why. She grinned and said, "Because you're the only one who doesn't snore, and because you'll help me figure out how to text in Italian." Then she leaned closer and whispered, "I want someone with me who'll notice the little things. The way the light hits the stones in Florence, the way the boats rock in Venice, the way memories feel different when you know they might be your last." I wanted to cry, but instead, I told her I'd bring extra memory cards for my camera. She smiled. That's my girl. In the following days, the group chat blew up. Cousin Ben shared links to Italian street food. Emily posted packing hacks. Mom asked if we should get matching luggage tags. Even Dad joined the chat once. He wrote, "Let's just make sure this doesn't get out of hand. We still need to be practical." Nobody responded. The truth is, we all knew this trip wasn't about being practical. It was about honoring a woman who spent her whole life putting others first, who finally decided that maybe, just maybe, she deserved to come first once. One night, a few days before the flight, I walked into Grandma's kitchen and found her standing by the stove, looking at an old photograph. It was of her and Grandpa, young and in love, standing in front of a small Italian cafe from a trip they took 50 years ago. "I wanted to go back," she said softly, "but I didn't want to go alone." Then she looked at me with those eyes that had seen so much and said, "I wanted to go back with the family I built, not the one I lost." That's when I knew. This trip wasn't a vacation. It was a goodbye, wrapped in plane tickets and postcards. A farewell without saying the word, and in her own gentle way. Grandma was asking us to remember her the way she always remembered us, with thoughtfulness, with love, and with a little homemade trail mix tucked in your purse. The morning of our flight felt like Christmas. Everyone arrived at the airport an hour early, suitcases rolling, neck pillows swinging, and Grandma, right there in the middle of it all, wearing her floppy hat and a shirt that said, "Ciao, y'all." She was glowing. Like a kid on our first field trip, she passed out Ziploc bags filled with gum, tissues, and cough drops, labeled each one with our names. Even the TSA agent cracked a smile. "This your first time flying with a gang, ma'am?" he asked. She laughed. "First time flying with people I love more than sweet tea." Then she handed him a butterscotch candy, because of course she did. We made our way to the check-in counter. I stood next to Grandma holding our passports. She looked up at the flight board like it was the gates of heaven. "Rome," she whispered, like it was a prayer. But then something shifted. Dad stepped up to the counter and started speaking quickly. Too quickly. His voice low, his back turned. The agent frowned, typing, then paused. "I'm sorry, sir. There's no reservation under her name." We all froze. Grandma tilted her head. "I'm sorry, what now?" Dad turned around and smiled, the kind of smile people use when they're hiding something. "There must have been a mistake," he said. "Maybe Mom didn't confirm her booking." Grandma looked confused. No, I have it right here." And she reached into her purse, pulling out the laminated itinerary. But Dad stepped forward and gently took it from her hands. "I mean, it's okay," he said. "Don't stress yourself. Let's not hold." Up the line, she stood there, blinking, her hands still outstretched. Empty now. Mom stepped closer. "Ted," she whispered. But he ignored her. Then he said it. "I thought you were going to sit this one out." Her face didn't move at first. Not anger, not confusion, just a stillness that broke my heart. Then she looked at me. I paid for this entire trip, she said softly. My family, and you forgot me? People around us had started to notice. A woman with a toddler stared. A man in a business suit looked up from his phone, but no one said anything. Then nodded slowly. Well, she said, I suppose everyone forgets their umbrella when it's sunny. She turned to the counter. Can I get a taxi back home? The agent blinked. Of course, ma'am. She turned to leave, dragging her suitcase behind her. Out her vitamins one by one, no one stopped her. I took a step forward, but Dad blocked me. She'll be fine, he whispered. She just rest. It's for the best. And in that moment, I felt something crack in me because I had watched her spend decades giving up vacations, dreams, luxuries for us, and now we were leaving her behind. For Rome, for museums and pasta and photo ops. She disappeared through the automatic doors. No one followed except me. I ran after her, found her outside, standing in the sunlight, suitcase next to her feet, staring at nothing. I called her name. She turned and smiled, but it wasn't the same smile. It's okay, she said. I've had a good run. Maybe I'll go to the garden store instead. Buy some new basil. Start that herb wall I've been dreaming about. I didn't know what to say. Didn't know how to fix it, so I just hugged her tight. I'm so sorry, I whispered. She kissed my forehead. Don't be. Families forget things sometimes. Birthdays, anniversaries, mothers. Her voice didn't shake, but her hands did. I helped her into a cab, watched as she drove away, and when I turned back toward the terminal, Rome suddenly felt very far away. I tried to enjoy the flight, tried to pretend we were just a normal family heading to Italy, but Grandma's empty seat next to me felt heavier than any suitcase on the plane. She should have been here fumbling with the seatbelt, passing out, gum, asking the flight attendant if they had chicken noodle soup. Instead, there was just silence. And that smile, my dad were too relaxed, like someone who'd finally handled a problem. Something felt wrong. More than wrong. It felt planned. When we landed in Rome, the excitement was contagious. People rushed for selfies and espresso, but I hung back that night. At the hotel, I couldn't sleep, so I opened the travel folder Grandma had given me, the one with all the bookings. There in clear font was her airline confirmation number. I typed it into the airline's website, just to see. Canceled. Not missed. Not unconfirmed. Canceled. 2 days before the flight, I froze. I looked again. There was even a refund confirmation, processed to a card that didn't belong to Grandma. It had the last 4 digits of my father's Visa. My chest tightened. Why would he cancel her ticket? Why would he let her show up, dressed and ready, just to humiliate her? Unless he wanted her to show up. Just not come with us. I opened my dad's laptop. He was asleep. Open like a bear in hibernation, the password was still the same. Golfgod22. So smug. I searched his email. Typed in Delta, then itinerary, then mom. One message stood out. Subject, adjustment to group booking, remove 1. Dated exactly 48 hours before the flight. He'd written, please cancel the passenger, Ruth. M. She will no longer be joining us. No need to inform her. It will be handled. It will be handled. My stomach turned. This wasn't an accident. It was a decision. A cruel, calculated act disguised under a fake smile and a forced goodbye. And the worst part, nobody questioned it. Nobody stood up. Not even me. I sat there in the dark hotel room watching the screen glow like a spotlight on betrayal. Then, a noise behind me. It was my mom. She didn't say anything at first, just stared at the screen. Then at me. I didn't know he'd cancel it, she whispered. But you knew she wasn't coming, I said. She looked away. I thought maybe she changed her mind. Your father said she was tired, that she needed rest. That's not what happened. She sat on the edge of the bed, wringing her hands. He said it would be too much for her, that the trip might wear her out, and we couldn't risk any issues overseas. I looked at her, eyes burning. She paid for everything. I know. She planned every detail. I know. She just wanted to make a memory. My mom nodded slowly. Then she said the one thing I didn't expect. He was afraid she'd find out. I blinked. Find out what? Head? That's not for me to say. Then she stood up and left the room. No more answers. Just more questions. Later that morning, we visited the Trevi Fountain. Everyone threw coins, made wishes. I just stood there, wishing I'd spoken up sooner. Wishing I'd asked the hard questions before the damage was done then. My phone buzzed. It was a text. From Grandma. Hope you're having fun. Try the pistachio gelato for me. No anger, no guilt trip, just love. And somehow, that hurt more than any accusation ever could. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I looked up at the fountain, at the tourists laughing, and I made my own silent promise. I would find out what he was hiding, and I would make it right. I couldn't let it go. After the fountain, after the gelato, after the fake smiles and family photos, I stayed up all night again digging. There was something my father didn't want Grandma to see, and if it had been about her health or her safety, he wouldn't have needed to lie. He would have said it, but he didn't. So I searched deeper, emails, texts, even the junk folder, and then buried in a chain of forwarded messages. I found it a scanned copy of Grandma's will attached to an email from her lawyer, marked confidential. Updated beneficiaries. The subject line, "Your mother made changes. Call me ASAP." My heart dropped. I opened the document. Grandma had revised her will just 3 months ago. She left instructions for most of her savings, including the house, to be split between her grandchildren, not her children. US. The next paragraph hit harder. Due to Ted's recent behavior and disregard for family obligations, I am removing him as executor of my estate. Ted, my dad. I leaned back, stunned. It wasn't just about the trip. It was about control, about money, about the one thing people always pretend they don't care about until they do. I printed the page from the hotel lobby computer, slipped it into my journal, then I did something I hadn't done in years. I confronted my father. We were in the hotel cafe halfway through breakfast. He was spreading jam on toast like nothing had happened. I slid the paper across the table. He read it, didn't flinch, just folded it neatly and said, "She didn't know what she was doing. She was of sound mind," I replied. "Your words, not mine." "You told the doctor that last month?" He stared at me. Then he said, "She's giving away the house to you kids. Do you even understand the taxes involved? That's not the point." She was manipulated. "No, she just finally saw through you." He leaned back. "I took care of her. You canceled her flight." His voice dropped. "She was going to embarrass us. Make everything about her like always. That trip was for us too." I stared at him. A man who once rocked me to sleep, now looking like a stranger in an overpriced shirt. "I don't know what's worse," I said. "That you lied, or that you think you're justified." He stood up and walked out. That was twist 1. Twist 2 came later that night, from someone I didn't expect. My mom. She knocked on my hotel door quietly, like she didn't want anyone to know she was there. She sat down holding a mug of tea. "I knew," she said, her voice small. I figured. No, I mean I really knew. She looked down at her hands. "He told me weeks ago. Said your grandmother was changing the will. Said she was being vindictive. Said we might lose the house if things didn't go our way." I waited. "He told me not to interfere. Said he'd fix it. I didn't know how. I didn't ask." "You let him cancel her ticket?" "I didn't think he'd go through with it." "But you didn't stop him." Double quotes. Silence. She took a sip of her tea. Her hands were shaking. "I was scared," she said, "of what would happen if we lost everything. Your college debt, the mortgage, our retirement fund." I wanted to yell, too. Ask how she could trade a woman's dignity for an extra cushion in her 401k, but I didn't because the truth was uglier than any scream. She looked up at me. "Do you hate me?" I wanted to, but all I said was, "I'm disappointed." And somehow that felt worse. She left without finishing her tea that night. I stared at the ceiling, wondering how a family built on sacrifice could fall apart over inheritance and fear. And then my phone buzzed again. "Grandma," another message. "Did you see the fountains? Did they sparkle? Like I remember?" They didn't. Nothing sparkled anymore. I saw Grandma standing at the curb, suitcase by her feet, smiling so we wouldn't feel guilty. I kept asking myself, how did we get here? And then I remembered something when I was chocolate with strawberries. Grandma arrived late, carrying lasagna, but no gift, no card, not even a happy birthday, one that doesn't scream but sinks deep. I never thought much of it. Just a small family oversight, I told myself. But now I started to wonder if it was part of something bigger. So, a real phone call she picked up after 2 rings. "Hi, sweet girl," she said. "I thought you'd be asleep." "I can't," I said. "I have questions." She paused, then said softly, "The cancellation? Just tired." And then she said something I never expected. "You know, your mother wasn't always this quiet." I sat up straighter. "What do you mean?" she sighed. I didn't trust her," she said plainly. "She grew up with nothing, no sense of structure. I thought she was after your father's stability." "That sounds..." Then continued. "I used to correct everything she did. How she folded towels, how she made gravy, how she dressed you kids. I made her feel like a guest in her own home." My chest tightened. I thought about all the silent dinners, all the moments my mom smiled too politely. She once asked me, Grandma continued, if I'd ever love her like a daughter. "What did you say?" I said, "You're not my daughter." You're my son's wife." The words hit like a slap. "And now?" I asked. "I regret it," she said. "But regret comes late. Usually when you're packing alone for a trip, you won't take—" I didn't know what to say. Then Grandma said something even heavier. "Your mother didn't want me on that trip?" I think, deep down, she wanted one thing for herself. But she let Dad handle it because she still couldn't say it out loud. It all made a twisted kind of sense. My mom, the quiet one, had never really forgiven Grandma. And when the chance came to have a family memory without her, she didn't stop it. She didn't push for it, but she didn't stop it. It wasn't revenge. It was release. "She's not cruel," Grandma added quickly. "She's just human. We all are." And then she chuckled, soft and weary. "I used to think I was the matriarch. Turns out I was the ghost in the corner." I asked. "I wanted you all to have your joy, even if it meant I had to stay behind." That was the thing about Grandma. She could make you furious and make you cry in the same breath, just like that. The image I had of our family shattered and then reshaped. No one was innocent. Then she laughed lightly. "And tell her I forgive her. But she still folds towels wrong." That made me smile. It was the first time in days I smiled and meant it. The next morning, I sat across from my mother in the hotel breakfast room. She was buttering toast, slowly, like someone trying to avoid eye contact with the truth. I didn't waste time. I called Grandma. I said. She stopped mid-spread. She told me everything. How you felt like a guest in her house for 30 years. How you never really forgave her. She exhaled long and tired. "I never asked you to choose sides, no, but you hoped someone else would make the hard call for you, and Dad did." She set the knife down. She was hard on me. She made me feel small. "And so, you stayed quiet when he erased her from her own vacation?" "I didn't erase her. You watched." Silence. Then she looked me dead in the eyes. "She would've done the same?" "No," I said. "She would have shown up, even if no one wanted her there. She always shows up." And that's when she said something that stopped me cold. She called me first. "Not you, not Ben, me." I blinked. "What are you talking about?" "She called me 2 weeks ago. Said she was making changes to the will. Said she wanted the grandkids to have everything. Said she was tired of rewarding grown children who act like spoiled ones." Her voice shook. "I begged her not to do it. Said it would split the family. Said Ted would lose it. She did it anyway. She said she didn't care." I sat back, stunned. She never told me that. She didn't want to put you in the middle. That was the moment I realized something. My grandmother knew. She knew exactly what she was doing. She knew who would panic, who would scheme, who would stay silent, and she let it happen because she was preparing something bigger. That afternoon, while the rest of the family went on a wine tour, I stayed behind. I opened Grandma's folder again, this time reading between the lines. That's when I noticed something. Tucked behind the itinerary was a sealed envelope labeled, "To be opened only in the event of unexpected changes." I'd missed it before. Inside was a short letter handwritten in perfect cursive. "My darling, if you're reading this, then something went sideways. That's okay. Families break before they rebuild, but I've left something in motion." There was a second page. A notarized copy of a separate legal document, a revocation of a previous trust, a new one naming me as the executor. Me, not my dad, not my mom. And it included a very specific clause in the event that I am excluded, omitted, or deliberately removed from a family event that I personally funded or organized. All listed beneficiaries, namely my children, shall be disqualified from receiving any monetary inheritance unless reinstated by the executor named below. My jaw dropped. She hadn't just anticipated betrayal, she'd planned for it, and she'd given me the power to decide whether or not to reinstate them. That was her twist, her counterplay. She knew who would betray her. She knew how deep old wounds ran, and she didn't want revenge. She wanted clarity. She trusted me to see who deserved a second chance that night. I couldn't sleep again, so I called her. She answered after one ring. "I figured you'd find the envelope," she said. "You planned all this." "I didn't plan it. I just prepared for what I couldn't control. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You left me in charge." "I trust you," she said simply, "because you ask questions, because you see people, and because I wanted at least one person to remember me for more than my lemon bars and lasagna." I wiped my face. "What do I do now?" "That's up to you," she said, "but whatever you choose, make it with kindness." The night before we flew home, Grandma arrived, unannounced, uninvited, and absolutely radiant. She walked into the hotel lobby like she owned the place, wearing her signature sunglasses, a scarf tied perfectly around her neck, and dragging that same little purple suitcase she'd packed weeks ago. You should have seen Dad's face. His jaw tightened. His coffee cup froze midair. His body stiffened like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar. "Mom," he said, his voice cracking just a little. Grandma smiled sweetly. "Oh good, your voice still works." Then she turned to the concierge and said, "Can someone show me to my room, please? Under the name Ruth Madison? Yes, it's prepaid, of course." That last line, she said it while looking directly at Dad. Everyone else stood frozen. No one knew whether to clap or hide, but I wanted to cheer. Later that evening, she called a family meeting in the courtyard by the fountain. Very Italian of her. We sat in a circle awkwardly. Dad tried to look unfazed. Mom looked like she hadn't exhaled in 20 minutes. My cousins were dead silent. And Grandma, she pulled out a folder. "Since we've already had one dramatic surprise this trip," she began, "I thought I'd offer a second." She handed me the folder. I nodded. Inside was everything. Her updated will, a clause removing her children if she was excluded. The letter naming me executor. I passed it around. No one said a word. When it reached Dad, he stared at it, then looked up at her. "You planned this?" "I protected myself," she replied. "From you. You're punishing me." "No, I'm holding you accountable." He stood up. "Do you have any idea how this makes me look?" She tilted her head, like a man who canceled his mother's flight and hoped no one would notice. Then, in a move no one saw coming, she pulled out a USB stick. "Here's a copy of your email to the airline," she said. "I requested it under my name. Freedom of information. Such a beautiful thing." She handed it to me. "Feel free to upload it somewhere if he ever tries to deny it." The color drained from Dad's face. "But don't worry," she added. "I'm not kicking you out of my life. I'm just taking you out of my finances." Ouch. "Cousin." Ben actually whispered, "Damn." Then Grandma turned to my mother. "I forgive you," she said gently, "but I won't forget that you stood by." Tears welled in my mother's eyes. "I know," she whispered, "and I'm sorry." Then shock of all, Shock's grandma hugged her. Not a cold pat on the back hug, but a long, warm, let's finally stop hurting each other kind of hug. After the meeting, people drifted away. Dad stayed behind. He looked at Grandma. For once, no excuses, no charm, just an older man standing in front of the woman who raised him, and realizing he'd failed her. "I don't know how we got here," he said. "You stopped listening," she replied, "and I stopped making excuses for you." He looked down. "I was scared," he said, "of losing control, of losing face." "You lost something far more important," she said. "But you can earn it back, if you're willing to change." Then she stood, walked past him. But as she passed, she paused. "You'll always be my son," she said, "but you're no longer my legacy." That line, that was the dagger. Not cruel, just honest. Later that night, Grandma and I sat on her balcony. She held a cup of hot tea. I held my breath. "Did you enjoy Rome?" she asked. "I did," I said, "but I think I enjoyed your arrival more." She laughed. "Well, darling, if you're going to make an entrance, make sure they remember it." Then, she reached into her purse and pulled out a tiny envelope for you. She said, inside was a handwritten note. "Families don't break in one moment. They chip away slowly until someone decides to stop the breaking. You stopped it. Thank you. Families don't fall apart all at once. They unravel slowly through silence, pride, old wounds never spoken out loud. But sometimes, it only takes one moment of clarity to stop the unraveling." In this story, it was a suitcase left behind at an airport. In your story, maybe it's an unanswered call, a birthday forgotten, a truth never told. What I've learned over years of hearing stories like this is that most families don't lack love. They just get lost under years of misunderstanding, fear, and habit. And sometimes it takes someone brave to finally say enough. Not in anger, but in truth. In this case, it was a grandmother with quiet wisdom and a backup plan no one saw coming. She didn't shout. She didn't seek revenge. She let the silence speak for itself, and then handed the next generation the power to do better. And maybe that's what we're all called to do. If this story made you feel something, anger, sadness, maybe even a little hope, I invite you to share it. Have you ever witnessed a family torn apart by silence or secrets? Have you ever been the one who had to speak the hard truth? Tell us in the comments. There's healing in telling your story. You never know who needs to hear it. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, raw, real, and full of heart, don't forget to subscribe. I share true-to-life tales just like this one, crafted with care for those who know that family is never simple, but always worth fighting for. And if this one stayed with you, you might also love the next story about a daughter who discovered her mother had been hiding a second family for 30 years. Yes, really. Click the next video. You won't regret it. And as always, thanks for listening. You made it all the way here. That means something. Until next time, take care of your story and take care of each other.